listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. As always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Our producer, Elliot Bowman, with us on the ones and twos. Michael, how we doing, man? It's draft week. We're officially here. Got still a couple more podcasts to go before we start picking players, but
it's an awesome week. It's always a good week. Yeah, it's a great week. I mean, this is a nostalgic week for me. I can still remember being in the first draft room in my life. I can remember, going into New York as a college student at Hofstra. I never got up at 3 a.m. for anything, and yet I would get on that train and sit there, and I met the great Joel Bushbaum in the Sheridan, and then, literally the chills in I thought about this today driving to work, the chills in my body when I was in the 84 draft room, which wasn't a really draft room. We were at 711 Nevada Street in San Francisco, it was in Redwood City, and the team meeting room, which was really small, had a partition in it. And it would go offense, defense, and then it would become a team meeting room. It was really tiny. And after the season was over, it became the draft room. And we would hang boards in the room. And I can remember my first draft being in there in 84, the Jerry Rice draft, where we traded up to get Jerry Rice and 12 rounds and, all the stuff that goes on, driving in there at 2 a.m. because the draft started at 5. And, Bradford Dillman, the movie. Do you know who Bradford Dillman is?
No.
So he's this old-time actor. He was on a bunch of FBI. He was a character actor back in the 60s and 50s. Really, he's still alive, but he was truly a draftnik. And Coach Walsh would let him in the room, and he would sit in there the entire draft. And after the 86 draft, in about the 10th round, 9th round, he'd just sit in there, and we had run out of picks of players because that was the draft. We had all these great picks. And he asked Bradford Dillman who he wanted to pick, and Bradford Dillman literally just whipped out of his briefcase. He had this whole thing written up that who he wanted to pick, and he had the greatest line of all time. And he talked about this deep nose tackle named Harold Hallman from Auburn. Mm-hmm. And he had a line in there, he gets more penetration than Warren Beatty at a sorority party, which I thought was as brilliant of a line as anything. We did draft him. He ended up going to Canada, made all Canada. I think he might be in the Canadian Hall of Fame. He was an undersized nose tackle, but those kind of memories, that you think of the day, you can remember calling players on the phone and making their lives rejoice. I want to put Coach Walsh on the phone, or here's Coach Belichick, or, it's just, to me, this is what this magical moment is all about. Of course, we're going to have to go through all the depressing things too, Femi. We're going to have to see about whose dog died and, going to get tears out.
I think we have multiple feeds because I know NFL Network, they have a feed, ESPN has a feed, and ABC has a separate feed. So there's 3 different.
And none of those feeds will have anybody who's been in a room before, literally in the room.
Well, your boy might be on one of them.
Who?
We're not going to
Daddy O today.
No, not him. Another guy.
Somebody sent me his on Get Up. He said that Richardson is the best player in the draft and that he should go number 2 overall. I mean, you just see, I think you can speak to this, and I would love you to become Twitter Femi when I ask you this question, okay?
Okay.
Because remember, I've got people at home. We have 2 Femis here, 2 faces of eyes.
2 faces.
We have 2 faces of eyes. Femi has this Twitter where I love that Twitter Femi. It's strong, it's powerful, it's opinionated. There's an edge to it. There's a little Jersey edge to it, which I kind of like. You got a little Route 9 in you, And then there's the nice Femi who's sitting next to me and doesn't really want to, but I want the Twitter Femi. You've gone through, I sent you our scouting manual.
Yep.
And you've kind of gone through it extensively.
Mm-hmm.
And we were discussing this before we started. How do you grade Richardson? How do you grade him to be the second player overall? And my point in bringing up Dan O is he has no idea about a grading system. So when he's talking on Get Up or whatever show he's on, he doesn't understand the league. He doesn't understand that personnel is a business. It's how to procure talent. You have to have a grading system. So when he makes a ridiculous statement like he makes, he just shows his ignorance of never having been in the league or understanding what it takes to run an NFL team. That's the problem. That's why I say when they have people up on the draft set, they have nobody who's been in the room. They have nobody who's really written a grading system. Your thoughts?
Richardson, I think, would obviously be in the developmental category, but I would also give him the chance to improve. So that's where I see Richardson. I'm like, this is a developmental player, which in the grading system, 6'1", and that is below like all the starter levels because you can't project what's going to happen because players, you never know. It could be positive, it could be negative what they'll end up doing. So you talk about a 6'1" player here who is below sufficient starters, below circumstantial starters, or good quality backup quarterbacks according to the system here, and you probably can't pick him that high. But however, and here's where I will kind of modify the grading system to my own little spin here. You want a little bit of spice. I do believe that you have to have some room for projection because we're drafting not just for this year, but for beyond that. And I think somebody like Richardson, if developed correctly in the right system, now you might ask, what system is that? Let's go to the 6-back offense, can turn into a quarterback that is very productive in the NFL.
That grading system was written in 1991 before Richardson was even born. That was written before he was even born.
Yeah.
And the reason it was written before he was being born is because there has been players like him before. And the reason that's been written before he was born is because there has been an overwhelming reality that those players have a hard time achieving that goal. There's a reason it's there. And you used a great word. You said, I would make an exception. The idea of scouting is to eliminate exceptions. Because when you start to make exceptions, you become a team of exceptions. Okay, so the reason that is there isn't because we had an idea sitting on First Avenue in Berea, Belichick and I, and said, well, we need to put this category. No. No, that was there because of the history. Remember, everything that you do in life, the creative process, is stolen from someone else. You steal ideas. So we didn't just come up with this grading system on our own one day. This is stolen from the Cowboys, the great Gil Brandt, and hopefully he's doing well today. And I'll miss Gil. He's not going to do the draft. But his system in Dallas in the early 60s, Bucko Kilroy, who I write about in my next book about the process. So this is over history. So when you use the word exception, you're right, it is, but the reason it's there is because we've gone through this before. There's been too many fatalities of people believing what you just said. And that's all it's trying to do, is trying to minimize your mistakes. And my point is I could care less what Dan's entitled to his opinion. My point is simply this. If you do not have a grading system, if you don't understand a grading system, if you don't apply a grading system, then basically you have all this A, B, C. It's just a random act. Yeah. And there's no continuity. Of course, now when he's done the draft on Saturday, he goes off to live his, nobody's going to call him back on that. Whereas if you're in the league, you can get your ass fired.
No, you definitely will get fired in the league. I think that's really something that you've been harping on all throughout this process, is the fact that where does this player grade, not just in comparison to the other guys in the class, but in comparison to other guys in the league, because that's ultimately who you should be judging them against here. And I want to ask you that because that will lead us into our first topic here on the pod, is Will Levis, the Kentucky quarterback. Because over the weekend, the betting market went heavy on Will Levis to go number 2 overall. Now, it's not of the same prohibitive favorite as a Bryce Young right now, who's, I believe, minus 2,000, minus 1,600, depending on wherever you get your betting in. But Will Levis right now is the new odds-on favorite to be the second overall pick at minus 145, minus 140, somewhere around there. Houston currently has that number 2 pick. When you talk about Levis, and we've had discussions about him on the show, we go back to the grading system. You have said that Will Levis doesn't really stack up to a quarterback who should be picked that high. Why do you think he might end up being picked that high if the betting market does know indeed that he will go in the top 2?
Because I think anytime you have decisions making involved, you have bias. You have predetermined agenda. So one thing the draft has done is it has forced outside factors to influence the inside factors. It's a dangerous thing. And so what I believe's happened over the weekend, and once this story broke last week that Houston didn't want to take a quarterback, I think the owner of the Texans basically listened to the outrage that was going on in his community and his fan base. And I think he probably went back and said, guys, can't we revisit this? Isn't there somebody else we could take? Isn't there a way we could do it? Now, every owner is going to deny that they do this, which is completely false, right? Especially ones that listen to the media as much as they do in Houston, as much as they do in some other cities. I mean, they do listen. They listen to the media. And so I think there's outside factors. I think the one thing that's very challenging about the draft is to eliminate bias and outside factors influencing your decision to move guys up. And I believe that's the only reason that Levis could move up. Because on our grading system that we started in Cleveland in '91, Levis is a 59. He's a backup player who's going to be, he's going to be in the bottom. You can't grade him that way. You could see him somewhere else, but on a lot of boards, I bet he's a 59. And then you got to be really careful and comfortable that you can get him in and develop him. That's a challenge.
And I'm going to read the description of a 59 player. This is 5.9 because you mentioned backup player, but just to give folks just sort of a glimpse about what this actually means. Here it is. Career number 2, backup quarterback with a developmental ceiling. Scout must define his ceiling/reason that will not allow him to develop into a good quality backup or win with starter. This player may have one or more good level or better positional skills, but has at least one critical factor with a defined ceiling that will block his ability to ascend. What is that for Levis that you think that's going to kind of block his ability?
Poise. Decision making in a critical time. Again, this wasn't written. This was written before Levis was born. Yeah. So you're applying. So this is history. History's in this. We have seen players through the course of 50 years, 60 years, 70 years that have had these traits similar to Levis. You could say, well, the game's different now. Okay, there's some similarities, but it is different. Mm-hmm. That's why you have it. That describes him perfectly. If you say he's different than that, you got to prove it. You just can't say it. You got to prove it. You got to say, okay, here's why. There's no evidence. Unfortunately, you have no confidence without evidence. You need evidence. You need something in there. Now, if there was a game or two where he was Joe Montana, leads his team constantly back, there's evidence of that. He got picked in the 3rd round. Arm strength. So that's why the system's in place. The system's in place because this isn't the first time we've seen a player like Will Levis.
The evidence is there with Bryce Young.
Yeah.
I mean, take a look at the Iron Bowl from a couple of years ago. Take a look at the SEC title game against Georgia. There's a plenty of evidence, which is why we believe he's going to go number 1 overall, and the betting markets believe that as well. We're going to talk more about some players, and we're going to pick some players and try to find some good matchups for these guys here as we're rolling along here on the GM Shuffle. Don't you go away. It's going to be a lot of fun here coming up next with Michael Lombardi.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, Michael. Now that it's draft week, everyone is putting out their draft content. I was reading earlier this morning, up and at it early in the morning. I had like 3 different publications. Like, wow, everyone is. It's almost like there was an alarm or some sort of alert set. It's all right. Notifications, send it out. 5 a.m. West Coast time. We'll have all the draft content out there. I'm seeing a lot of mock drafts. We're seeing all sorts of big boards and all that. So we figured, being this Monday of the draft week, that we would do something. But we're going to do a little bit of spin on it. It's not going to be your typical mock draft that you see at every other place. This is going to be kind of Michael's, if in the room, in the war room, because you have sat in that room, you've had to make those selections. What would you do with each one of these teams? Right. I think that's kind of how we lay it out.
All right, so let's paint the room a little bit because I don't think fans really get a chance to understand the room. So there is 2 boards in every draft room. All right, so there is the vertical board, which is the players lined up by the definition of the grading system. There's the 7-0s, the 6-0. It's not done by rounds, at least the way we did it in Cleveland and the way they do it in New England now, and I'm sure in Houston and in Las Vegas and other places that have been in that system. So on the side of the board is the grades. On the top of the board are the positions, and then the vertical board is they're aligned by the grades. And then there's the horizontal board, which is comparing the running back to the tight end, if they're in the same category, who's better? So that's the horizontal board. So you've got to be able to see. So that the one board is vertical, the other board is horizontal, and then on the sideboard, you basically have every team, and then you have all their team needs. So for example, you might have Arizona. They need an outside defensive lineman. They need a corner. They need an inside tackle. They need a wide receiver. You list all their needs, okay? And you kind of have that going across. So you're looking at that all the time. And then then you have the needs by the position. So who needs a quarterback? And then you tag all those teams. So now you've got those 2 boards. And then you have then on the final board, you have all the players ranked 1 through 2, most teams have like 110 players on the board. So 1 through 110. And then that's how they're stacked. And then if you get to the situation where, okay, we have a chance to take player Y or player X, they're both the same grade, who's actually the better player? And you want to be able to make that decision before the heat of the battle. And then that's the 3 boards. And so you sit in there, and I think when you see all those people in the room, not everybody has had influence on all those boards. The pro department handles the team needs board. The college scouts do the 1 board. But then the horizontal board is really done by the decision makers, like who is actually making this decision. And the stacking of the positions are done by the decision makers. So there's like 3 separate boards within there and the different departments, and then who actually is making the call.
So you mentioned, let's say, comparing the running back to the tight end, they have similar grades. How do you make that compare? Is it positional value? Like, how do you ultimately make the decision?
Well, a lot of it is positional value, right? Or if we take the inside defensive tackle, for example, and we need a running back, but there's 3 running backs we like, but there's only 1 tackle we like. So you might say, okay, we're going to take the tackle. Or you just say, hey, look, this running back is graded higher than we have. We got to take him. Then it's easy. But when they're all kind of the same, somebody's got to make that horizontal call. Like, is this going to be valuable? The reason teams trade down is they trade down because there's a player, there's a cluster of players that they like. They don't know who it is. They don't know what position it'll be, but they're willing to take an extra pick. They're going to get somebody that they like. It may be, we have 5 guys we like, and there's 7 picks to go. We'll get one of those guys, and then you trade down. But if you only have 1 guy, it's hard to trade down.
Yeah. Then you need some sort of a massive haul or something like that.
Then you say, look, we can't. We're going to make the pick here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good way to kind of set the stage for us here, because we're going to talk about these teams inside the top 10,
right,
and what you would do in the room if you were the decision maker here. So let's go to Charlotte, North Carolina, Michael.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is really easy. I think this has been easy all along. Look, Carolina needs a quarterback. We make no mistake about that. They're going to pick Bryce Young. I think they become a really good team with Bryce Young. I'm not saying they become an elite team, but I think they become a good team. I think Bryce Young is ready to play right now. I think if you read the grading system, he's either a 6.9 or a 7.0 in the grading system. He'll have a size. He'll have an X on it, which means he's undersized for the position. So he'll have 1 letter. But the reality of it is he makes them legitimate. And with their running game and their ability to block up front with what they've done with their offensive line, they need a receiver still. They need other pieces. And defensively, they got a chance to be good. They were good last year. If they can keep J.C. Horn and Jackson, their 2 corners, better, healthy, Derek Brown play better. They need another rusher to go along with Brian Burns, but I think this gives them a step in the right direction.
And for the grading system right here, the 6.9 to 7.0, you guys outlined some of the categories that guys need to excel in. That's leadership, decision-making, overall accuracy, and clutch production. If you watched any college football the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, once again, the system was written before Bryce Young was born. Yeah. That's the key point to understand here, is because there isn't just like Bryce Young isn't unique. Will Levis isn't unique. There have been other guys similar to him. As I've said many times, the FBI doesn't start looking for serial killers in the phone book. There's a profile. And so profiling is what really is scouting all about. You've got a profile. That's really what happens oftentimes, Femi, is the profiling of the players, especially when you're a team that's used to doing things one way. Like the Giants, for example, have, this system is very Giant friendly. It's very much from the Giants because of Belichick and George Young, and he got it from the Bucko Kilroy element. When you're used to that size speed thing, and you built your program on that, you're used to looking at that. So when they hire different coaches that are not familiar with that system, it takes some time to train them. Parcells, when he was there in the early 80s, that was his foray into it. Plus he knew Al, so Al taught him. So it was a symmetrical thing for him to walk into. But then as you've changed to Jim Fossil or to these other coaches, you have to spend time educating them. Because trust me, I can tell you this: there's no coach that really understands the grading system. None of the position coaches don't even give it to them. It's way too complex for them. It really is, because that's not their job.
Yeah, their job is just to maybe hone in on one position and master.
Grade them up. Tell me what you think.
Well, let's coach up D'Amico Ryans down in Houston. First year head coach Nick Caserio come over from New England using the system here. And when we look at our options at number 2, Bryce Young, the preferred quarterback option off of the board,
Right.
What do we do here?
I think if I were Nick, I would take the Wilson kid, who I was told last night that he's been cleared on pretty much everybody has the same medical grade now, that he's going to be fine. I would take Wilson, and I would tell the owner, look, let me take Wilson here, and I'll do everything I can at 12 to get a quarterback. It might be Richardson, it might not be Levis, I don't know. But I think I can get up to 7. I think I can get up to 6. I think I can get up there, and I'll take a quarterback there. Just give me the chance to get a proven player here at 2, and we'll take the chance at quarterback. I think, to me, when you have 2 picks as close as Nick does together, you have to marry the picks. You've got to marry the pick. And so you know you're not going to get Wilson at 12, right? Mm-hmm. But you probably could have options at quarterback at 12. You might have. I think there's a really good chance you get C.J. Stroud makes it to 12. I think there's a really good chance Richardson makes it to 12. So you may not have Levis at 12, but you'll have somebody. And so to me, I would try to sell, if the owner's pushing you to take a quarterback, I would sell that. I would trade whatever it took me to get up to satisfy the owner, and knowing I got a good player and take the chance on the quarterback. So I think I would do Wilson there. I would really work hard on trying to get 12 moved up. And I think what Nick would do, if he can't move 12 up, he'll move 12 back.
Is it easy to convince an owner on that, saying like, hey, we know that you want us to get a quarterback here, but this Wilson kid is our foundational defensive player. Like, we need, like, how easy is that to make that sales pitch to the owner who's hearing all the noise that we talked about from the radio stations, the bloggers,
it's hard.
Everyone's
it's really hard. It's a challenge, but I think he has to do it. I think he can't let the owner kind of mess up his draft. Look, the owner, Nick's hired 3 coaches now, right? And the owner's been involved, and I think the owner has driven 2 of the hires. And look, Sean Payton wouldn't be in the league today if D'Amico takes the Denver. D'Amico had the Denver job. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had the Denver job. And so he turned it down to take the Houston job. So, D'Amico's got to help Nick out here too.
Yeah.
He's got to help him out here. Look, we can't be short-sighted here, and give Nick the chance to move up from 12. I think that would be my play. I would want to marry those 2 picks together. And if the owner's that insistent on getting a quarterback, then, I would try to trade up at 12 and just say, okay, I can get to 8. I can get to Atlanta 8. It's going to cost me. I'll even overpay for it. Mm-hmm.
What if D'Amico says, all right, Cal, I hear you. You want us to get a quarterback. Hey, Nick, we both are familiar with Mac Jones in New England. I worked with Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan had a lot of good stuff to say about Mac Jones. You've worked with New England. You know Nick Saban. I know Nick Saban. I played at Alabama. I still have close ties to that program. I hear only good things about Mac Jones. Do we get involved with a trade to New England?
I think a lot of the Levis movement that we didn't talk about in the first block. Yeah. The Levis movement was because they had Levis into New England, so that naturally promoted a rumor that they would trade up. I think that's really not true. I think that's a complete fallacy. I think, look, Mac Jones had a really good rookie year, had a really bad second year. I don't think they know who they are, but I would say this. I have a sense that they probably feel this is a 1-quarterback draft like I do. And there's no way, no one, as you read the grade, there's no way they could have Levis, using that grading system, they could have Levis graded high enough to go up and get him. I think they brought him in to do their due diligence, which you should do for every player. You should do it for every single player, especially a quarterback.
Yeah. But we have said, though, teams don't really mess around with these visits because you only get 30 of these visits. So you can't just go out there.
But that's a critical visit because you basically want to spend time because you might have to play against this guy. What happens if he goes to Indianapolis and you're the Patriots? You usually play Indy all the time. We know this kid. We kind of have a feel for this kid. It's really a smart maneuver. It's not wasting a 30 pick.
Okay. No, I think the chances are that one of these AFC South teams is going to get a quarterback is pretty darn high. It feels like whether it's Houston or Tennessee or Indianapolis, like hell, they all 3 might get new quarterbacks based on the way the draft has fallen here. The Arizona Cardinals are in an interesting spot. We will get to the Cardinals because right now we have Bryce Young off the board. We have Tyree Wilson off the board. The Cardinals have talked about pass rusher. They also have a quarterback who's coming off an ACL injury that they got to protect. Maybe, just maybe, they look at guys who can block those pass rushers, or they try to bail out of there and move, because we know the for sale sign is up in Glendale, Arizona. They want to get out of that pick at number 3. We'll talk about that pick, but we're going to take a quick break here. This is the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings, and VSiN.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
Let's keep it rolling with our discussion about these teams in the top 10. Once again, this is not a mock draft. This is more so kicking around scenarios.
I think it's all
what the conversation's like
based on need and decision maker.
Yeah.
Now, we got Monty at Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no real history. And one of the things I think people don't realize is most teams keep track of, at least we did in New England, we did in Cleveland, is you keep track of how many picks this general manager uses, what's the philosophy. Mm-hmm. You basically want to write up of the GM. You want to be able to say, okay, this is who he is. And then you also want to basically go through every single trade that this individual made over his career. And so you have an idea about what you're dealing with. And so you can sit there and say, okay, this guy's made, 13 draft day trades. Okay, all right, let's take Eric DeCosta. He's made 13 trades during his career. 3 of them he's traded up. He's never traded for a future pick. And so of the 4 trades he's made, trade up, he's traded 4 times up, 3 times down, and 1 time he's traded for a player. So you have this history in front of you. Mm-hmm. So the person, Monty Ossendorf, there at Arizona, you don't have a history with him. He's from the New England system. He's within Tennessee. So he's kind of been with Charlie Casserly down in Houston. So he's been with different things. This will be all need-based, right? This is going to be need-based. And I think they have huge needs. They need a rusher. They need a corner. They need an inside guy. I think they'll take Will Anderson because he's safe. Mm-hmm. But to me, if I were Monty, I would take Carter. I think one of the things there's a couple misconceptions in the National Football League as it relates to personnel, like the number 1 receiver. You and I've had this debate before. Yep. There's very few number 1 receivers in the league. A lot of good receivers in the league, mm-hmm. but true number 1s, there's very few. There's very few great 3 techniques in the league. 3 technique is a very, very challenging position to satisfy. We think we have it, but we really don't. It's like for every Aaron Donald and Warren Sapp, there's generations of draft picks that go through. This 3 technique is really hard because you want somebody who can control the line in the run game. You want somebody who can power the guard back. You want somebody who can rush the passer and get into the paint. There's not a lot of human beings on planet Earth that can do those 3 things, right? It's hard to find guys like that. That's why, to me, Jalen Carter would be my pick for Arizona. If I were running the team, I think they'll pick Will Anderson because there's always going to be another Will Anderson.
Yeah.
You might go another 10 years before you get another Jalen Carter. It's like Jordan Davis last year. For him to be the 14th pick overall in the draft is absurd because there's very few human beings his size, his speed. That's what Al Davis used to say all the time. Oh, fuck, guys. How many humans are like that, mm-hmm. right? Like, how many human beings are this big, this fast, and can do that? And Al was kind of a little bit from your vein. We got to get him to do it. But when you get really big, really fast, and explosive, like like Davis, and then of course Jalen Carter, you got to take him. I mean, here I'll give him Anderson. I think Carter should be the pick there.
Well, it's your scenario, so we can give him Carter here.
I'll give him Carter there.
Yeah, let's give him Jalen Carter.
I'll give him Carter there.
Now,
it just makes more sense. And it's to me, whether you need an outside rusher or an inside rusher, take the one that's harder to get. Mm-hmm. Again, 3 techniques are hard to find.
And we always talk about it. Every single quarterback says, I hate interior pressure. I can handle guys on the edge. I can step up in the pocket. But if you get into my lap, it makes my life difficult. I don't know why. And we're seeing defensive tackles now this offseason have been getting paid. So maybe that rises the value.
The pain is where it is. I don't understand if you're a young coach or a defensive line coach in college football, you need to be able to, in your pass rush drills, they always have those lanes, pass rush lanes. You need to educate the players in the paint. Not enough players understand the paint. We know the paint in basketball, right? Yep. We know how to get in the paint. Embiid doesn't know how to get in the paint, but everybody else does, right?
15-footer.
It's fadeaway 15-footer. But you got to be able to get in the paint, right? You got to get into that paint. And so when you do that, you affect the quarterback. And sacks are great, but affecting the quarterback's what it matters.
Now let me play the role, since you're Monty Austin for it. I'll play the role of Jonathan Gannon. Pew, 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 pew. We're going to make some explosive plays here. this is our first pick, Monty. Our first time as the regime of the Cardinals. We need to get somebody who's safe.
Yeah.
Are we comfortable with what Carter has off the field? Because let's talk about this. Our facilities in Glendale, Scottsdale's not too far away. That's a nightlife area.
I know.
Can
That's
this
why I
player
gave him
handle
originally. I gave him Will Anderson
Can
because
this player handle it?
I think they'll be scared of Carter. I think Monty will want to play it safe down the fairway. Although your boy Jonathan Gannon, we wrote about him for the Daily Coach today. I mean, he, that press conference he had last week, where he lied and the Philly media called him out on it. Look, I do radio every Friday in Philly, and they were always on Jonathan as I was because I thought he was too vanilla. But when he cites stats like he did, it's wrong. And I think it's further proof, Femi, that I know we think this guy becomes a head coach, he's ready for the job. And I don't understand why coaches like Jonathan Gannon don't have somebody outside the building coaching them. Like, there is a business for coaching coaches. And a guy like Gannon really needs a coach.
The daily coach.
Well, yeah, but he needs somebody every day. He needs somebody like we only write 500 words a day. Like, he needs somebody in his ear. Like, Jonathan, here's what you need. Your messaging here. Like, to me, for if I were Gannon and I just got $5-6 million to be a head coach, I'd hire a personal coach. I'd pay him $200,000 a year. What do you care? It's going to make you better. How would I handle this? What should I do in this? There's not enough of that. And as we're getting younger in head coaching in the league, experience matters. I mean, John Kennedy, when he was the president of the United States, hired Harold Macmillan, the former prime minister of Great Britain, to give him advice and counsel because he wanted somebody that had been through the ropes before, somebody who had been through 50 years of a grading system before, to give him some education. Not saying he's going to do what he wanted him to do, but I think Gannon really blew it on that one. And now he's fighting from behind. Now he's perceived as a liar because he lied. He pulled what they called in Great Britain a Ratner, which is this guy, Gerald Ratner, who owned a jewelry company. And he was speaking to the economic summit in Royal Hall, 5,000 people there. And they asked him, how do you make so much money on your jewelry? He says, because it's crap. This is basically crap. It's all crap. We just sell crap jewelry and people love it. Well, what happened is he went out of business 6 months later because, he told, he did something he should never have done. Same thing, Gannon. He should never have said that. Like, you're not getting anywhere with that. You're not getting anywhere fighting the media, especially when they cover the press. Everything's documented and written.
Yeah. And also, I don't know why you're even picking that battle. Like, you no longer work in Philly. What's the benefit?
You know what the thing it tells me? It lets everybody know he's got rabbit ears, that he was listening to everything. Like, he was listening to everything. That's not a good sign either. That shows weakness in leadership. You're listening to if you knew they were saying that, that means you're listening to it. You can't let them know you even listen.
Yep. That's the best way to combat that stuff is to ignore. As we say, ignore the trolls on Twitter. Let them know that you're not listening. Let's keep it moving. Well, before we keep it moving, because number 3 is a spot where a lot of people are predicting a trade here. Carter there, Anderson there. Obviously, we're not going to predict any sort of trade here, but do you think that phone is ringing, or is Arizona just putting up that for sale sign, hoping and begging that somebody calls?
I don't see how anybody could. I've said this all along. It's a 1 quarterback draft, and I don't see how anybody could have a quarterback rated high enough to go up and give assets to do it. Any quarterback you take after Bryce Young has a problem with them. So why would I attach assets? Now, if I said earlier in this pod, if you're Nick Caserio and your owner's on your ass to get a quarterback, then maybe you would give up a few more assets to get one. But to me, it's not worth it.
Would you go from 12 to 3 if you're Nick?
If I were Tennessee, if I was 12 to 3, no, I wouldn't. I mean,
11 to 3 though with Tennessee, who you just brought up.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, that's expensive. You're gonna have to give away next year's one. You want to give away next year's one for these quarterbacks? I don't want to pick them where they are, let alone give away next year's one.
So maybe a 2nd or 3rd round draft choice. All right, well, we'll keep it moving there. We'll give Carter to Arizona because this is your deal. Once again, you think that Anderson's probably going to be what they go since that's safer, but this is our deal here. This is
I give him Anderson because I think I'm going to stay with Anderson on this because I think Monty will play it down the middle of the field.
All right, so Monty's going to go ahead and just, he's going to lay up and take.
See, here's the problem with Anderson. Let's make a prediction. What's today? April 24th?
Yep.
I bet you Anderson doesn't get his 5th-year option picked up.
Wow, you're willing to go that far, huh?
I bet he don't.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to make sure we keep this tape on. I mean,
Oh,
Apple,
trust me, we got
Spotify,
Twitter
they
will
do a
remind
good
us.
job.
Yeah.
They'll clip this out for us. So
Yeah.
4 years from now, we'll see what happens with Will Anderson. The Colts at number 4. A lot of people projecting Will Levis onto Indianapolis here. You will play the role of Chris Ballard, and I will play the role of, God forbid, I'm Jim Irsay coming in here. This is a hypothetical, folks.
I think if I were Chris Ballard, I would take an offensive tackle here, and I would go sign Lamar. That's what I would do. I would draft Paris Johnson, the left tackle at Ohio State, and then I would get on an airplane after that pick was done, and I'd go meet with Lamar, and I'd sign him, and I'd give DaCosta 2 number 1s in the next 2 years or whatever. I don't know if he could do it now because the draft's over. I think it closes down. I try to make a trade somehow for Lamar. Got a left tackle, now I got a quarterback. I'm going to win the South, baby. I'm going to win the South.
Well, here's the thing, though, as Jim Irsay, I don't know about these guaranteed deals. I mean,
there's no guarantee. I don't have to guarantee it. We'll skill guarantee it we'll do a 3-year deal with them. We'll skill guarantee the whole thing, and the injury we'll injury guarantee the whole thing, and we'll skill it as it goes along, and we'll tell the kid exactly how it's going to go, and there we go. Make a deal with him. I got a quarterback. I'm going to win the South. I'm going to win the South. I make those 2 moves, I win the South. It's a little bit like when I play chess with Dominic. I can make 2 moves and get him in checkmate. Now I know he's 5 years old,
sorry,
and he's kicking my ass in chess. But anyway,
give it a few years and start waxing.
Seriously, if I make these 2 moves, it's checkmate for the South. I draft me a left tackle. I go trade for Lamar. I'm in business, baby. You think season tickets wouldn't be buzzing in Indianapolis at that point?
Lamar Jackson's a former MVP. That's music to my ears.
I got a left tackle from Ohio State. I got a really good offensive line. I got a quarterback on the carpet indoors. Watch out, man. I'm rolling.
Okay.
But I think they'll take Levis.
What that said, he's like, well, let's give him Paris Johnson. Let's mix it up here. Let's get spicy.
All right, I give him Paris Johnson.
Paris Johnson, Ohio State tackle.
All right.
So our producer Elliot Bowman, a Colts
Pete,
fan, is now throwing his pen.
We can go quickly here. Pete is salivating.
Seattle.
Oh my God, he's sitting there saying, "You telling me you're giving me Jalen Carr? I haven't had a 3 technique since Michael Bennett was in town. Are you kidding me?"
It's been a long time. It's been a long time in the Pacific Northwest. Now, as John Schneider, I will play the role of, hey, Pete. We got to talk about this.
Pete knows how to manage guys.
We got to talk about
one
this.
One thing about Pete Carroll at SC, Pete understands how to handle guys. Pete will get that. Pete will be. I mean, one thing about you got Pete Carroll as your head coach, you got a chance with this one.
We're gonna take a quick break, but we're gonna go to the Pacific Northwest next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN. Here is Femi Abebefe.
All right, the things have changed in the Pacific Northwest because we made a little bit of revision to this draft here. We're going to have Jalen Carter go to the Cardinals at number 3. Paris Johnson just went off the board at number 4 for the Indianapolis Colts.
Only if we trade for Lamar.
Only if we trade for Lamar.
Yeah.
With the contingency that we're going to trade for Lamar. So as Jim Irsay, I'm excited. Former MVP, season ticket holders. I'll be excited. Our producer,
You're going to win the
Elliot
South.
Bowman,
I'm going to give you the South right now. Checkmate. There it is.
Hang the banner.
Yeah.
Print the shirts. We'll do it up. Now with Seattle. Young, Wilson, Carter, Johnson off the board. Seattle sitting here at 5. Pete Carroll, John Schneider having this discussion here right now. We got some big-time prospects still available. Alabama's Will Anderson. Or maybe we go the quarterback route and have a developmental guy with Geno Smith as the spot starter in 2023.
I think it's too early to do that. They have an extra one. I'm sure they are interested in the quarterback, but I just don't see that there. But what I do see is them getting a blue-chip player that they feel like they could. I think it's either Weatherspoon or Ryan or Will Anderson. I could see them being like, look, we need an outside rusher who's a legitimate player. We'll get him going in our scheme. I would give them Will Anderson there. I think they would love if Carter made it to him, just because I think it gives. Now I know they signed Draymond
Jones.
Draymond Jones is the 3 technique, but you could never really have enough of them. That would really make them a stronger team, having those 2 guys inside. So, I just don't see them taking a corner. I think Witherspoon would be a good consideration here, but I don't see them taking a corner based on the way Pete has been able to develop corners and find corners later in the draft. Schneider, they do a really good job of finding talent. So, my sense of it is I think that, I think they would take Anderson here.
All right, as John Schneider, Pete, I agree with you. Anderson is the cleanest player. We do need some edge rush. We need some pass rush because that was our one weakness on our defense last year. We couldn't get to the quarterback. However, we've been on this circuit for a long time looking at quarterbacks. And even when we had Russell Wilson, We looked at Patrick Mahomes. We liked him a lot. We passed because we had Russell Wilson. We looked at Josh Allen in Wyoming. We liked him a lot. We passed because we had Russell Wilson. We've been on the circuit this year. We've been taking selfies with all these guys. Levis is there. Richardson's there. Stroud is there. Is this the time? Is the iron hot right now? Do we got to strike right now with the quarterback? Because we can give these guys a lot of time to develop and sit behind Geno Smith now.
I think if they felt that strongly about the player, maybe that makes sense. I guess what I'm seeing this is through my eyes. I don't feel that strongly. Now maybe John does, and that's what makes every draft interesting, is because there's always going to be there's always going to be a approval of certain players.
Mm-hmm.
I see this guy this way, you see him that way. So I can't see that from my eyes. Would it shock me if it happened? Yeah, because I think to me, John's really smart and John knows talent. And I think that, he's got to see the problems in it, in this whole thing. They still like Drew Lock. I know that's crazy, but they still do.
They do.
But I mean, I just feel like you're wasting this. This is an opportunity to get a front seven player in your defense. Look, every team in the league hopes they take a quarterback because it means one more player to them. I mean, every team in the league picking, let's say, 7 and back. They want the first. They want Mel Kiper's draft where quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be utopia for every team, because now we're going to get a really good player. We're going to get a defensive player. The concern you have if you're picking in the bottom of the top 10 is you're not going to get a defensive player, because there's 3 defensive players that move the needle. There's Witherspoon, there's Carter, and some would say Anderson. I wouldn't. And Tyree Wilson. So there's 4. I think there's 3.
Well, let's take Will Anderson here.
Okay.
We'll go take Will Anderson. We'll play it safe. We'll add to this defense, and we'll try to get after the quarterback in the NFC West. Now, on the clock, the Detroit Lions. As we're trying to continue to restore the roar in Motor City, we've done a lot of good stuff patching up that secondary, but maybe we try to add and strengthen the strength here in the Motor City.
I think their number one need is corner. I think they'll take Witherspoon. Tough. Everything Campbell represents, Witherspoon has. So I think this is an easy pick for them. I think they'll take Witherspoon. I think it makes sense for them. I think Aaron Glenn would say, okay, finally I have a corner like Lattimore that I can kind of roll the coverage away from him and win one-on-one. It gives me some flexibility. I don't really, would I would rather have an outside pass rusher? Yeah, but Wilson's gone, Anderson's gone. I'll take the corner.
Why Witherspoon over Gonzalez?
I think I'm not a lover of Gonzalez. Gonzalez would remind them too much of Jeff Okudah. He's there, but he's not. At some point, at the end of the day, you got to cover somebody and make a play. I have Gonzalez going later. I don't love him as much as other people do. I think there's other corners in the draft that will end up being better. But I just don't. To me, Witherspoon's tough. Gonzalez is kind of really a good athlete, but sometimes we overvalue athleticism at corner for play. Like, corner is an instinctive position. It's not all just get the best athlete and make him a corner. It's a balanced, instinctive position. You got to be able to jump off one foot and make a play. You got to stay in balance down the field. You got to have instincts to know when the ball's coming. You got to have playmaking skills. I mean, those are hard things to find. They're just not, your mama lifts you from the crib. You either have them or you don't.
At number 7, the Las Vegas Raiders can go in a number of directions.
I think the Raiders they have to go kind of with somebody that is clean. If they didn't have Josh Jacobs, I would say Bijan Robinson's the easy pick because he's clean. He's a good player. They know what they're going to get. They're going to finally get a first-round pick that's going to get on the field and play well. So I'll take Skronsky here, the offensive tackle. They could put him at right tackle. That would finally give them a really good tackle to go along with it. Would they like a defensive player? I'm sure they would. Is there anyone left? Who? Nolan Smith's a Sam linebacker. You can't take him. Murphy from Clemson, may go a little bit later now. But, that's not going to get it done. I think they have to hit with this. They have to get a starter. And whether Skronsky's a guard or a tackle, he's going to be a good player, so take him.
Well, that's my issue here, is that we got some tackles on the board that we could go and trade down for. Why are we taking a guy who might be a guard?
Well, because maybe the phone's not going to ring. Maybe somebody don't want to come up. Now, maybe if Nick wants to come up to 12 and pick Richardson, then to go ahead and give him the deal. I think at 7, the Raiders would be open for business for the quarterback, because assuming there's enough tackles on the board left to where they could go. Because if they go down to 12, what are we going to get when we get to 12?
Yeah, you don't want to be wiped out at that point. But I think this is a dream scenario for the Raiders. If all of the 3 quarterbacks are there at 7, there should be somebody that's desperate enough to come and move up. But
I wouldn't count on it.
Wouldn't count on it? So let's
I think maybe you 7, but to go from 19 to 7 is expensive.
And 19 right now is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
Tampa, huh? Jason Light, is he making phone calls?
I think Jason Light has to do something to preserve the future of the franchise there. They're in such bad cap shape. They have really, I could see them trading for Trey Lance. I could see them doing that. I could see them doing anything to be able to say to the Glazer family, look, we got our quarterback of the future. Let me rebuild the team. Because I think right now where his team is, it's heading in a spiral down. They're going to have to. And the one thing that gives a general manager more length is a young quarterback.
Yeah. Well, Ryan Pace tried to do that as well.
Twice. You don't get twice at that.
Yeah, that's true. You don't get 2 bites at the apple. But Tampa Bay had a hell of a run with Tom Brady. I think a lot of teams would trade that.
I think that's what he did. And they spent a lot of money on the cap, and they did it knowingly, and now they have cap issues. Yeah. And they got to pay the piper, just like the Rams are paying the piper. I mean, the Rams' cap troubles aren't over yet.
Oh, I think they're just beginning.
Yeah.
Probably. They're just beginning. But at least the Super Bowl is shiny in the office, and it looks really nice. Atlanta Falcons now on the clock. So we have Young, Wilson, Carter, Johnson, Anderson, Witherspoon, and Skoronski now off the board. Where do we go here?
This is a hard one for Atlanta because Atlanta needs an outside defensive. They need another rusher. Could they take Murphy from Clemson? Maybe. They need a receiver. There's no receiver to take here that you would like, right? They need an inside defensive tackle. They're not going to take the Pitt kid here. It's too early, I think. I think they are really a team that would trade down based on this scenario. I think could they take an offensive tackle? Yeah, I do. Everybody has them taking Bijan Robinson. I don't see that. I initially thought that. I don't see that. I think to me, the play for them would be they traded for Okudah, so that means they would like a Gonzalez. I would give them Gonzalez here.
Ooh, okay. I like it.
I just don't see them. To me, it doesn't set up for a position for them. They don't need a tackle, right? Mm-hmm. They don't need, they need an outside rusher. They need a wide receiver. They need a defensive tackle. They could use an OT. Could they take it? They could use a linebacker. I don't see them taking Nolan Smith as the 8th pick over. Oh, no. So here, let's talk about Nolan Smith.
Georgia fans might want that.
Let's talk about Nolan Smith for a second. Nolan Smith plays Sam linebacker. He's 238 pounds. He only played like 200 plays last year. All right, so you say, well, we'll take him, we'll make him a Sam backer. There is no such thing as a Sam backer. I think the biggest misconception about the NFL today is everybody still talks about downs. First down. He's a first down linebacker, second down linebacker, third down. Downs are irrelevant. Downs are completely irrelevant. It's personnel groupings. So you ask yourself, what personnel groupings would this guy stay on the field? All right, so if you're in 11 personnel, 1 back, 1 tight end, where's Nolan Smith playing? We're not playing base till 11, so there's no Sam linebacker. If he plays down, he's 238 pounds. They're going to run the ball right up his ass. So where does he play? What formation does he? Well, he's a DPR now. We're not going to be the true traditional Pete Carroll. We're going to play a Sam backer at the end of the line. Mm-hmm. Remember Bruce Irvin and all those guys, right? That's kind of where. But nobody can play that anymore because on first down they're in 11. On second down they're in 11. Nobody's in 21 anymore. So this whole notion of first and second down is ridiculous. If scouts still talk about it, they don't understand. They're not paying attention to the league. The league is about what personnel groups are on the field. And even when that happens, even if they were in 21, let's say San Francisco's in 21 and they got McCaffrey and another back there, they're really in 11. You want a Sam backer on the field against that? That's what they want you to be in.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to go with Atlanta. I'd put Gonzalez there.
Man, but to be devil's advocate for Nolan Smith, the athleticism, those numbers are off the charts.
Off the charts. Wonderful. Always hurt. Always in the hoodie at the coin toss. Okay, always with the hoodie at the coin toss. And that numbers don't come off to the field. Where are we going? How do we play them? Okay, you say, well, we're a 34 team. We'll play them at 34 outside linebacker. Okay, when are we in 34? Against 21. They're not in 21. So they're in 11. We don't play 34 to 11. We're going to walk him out on space in 11 if he's the slot. I mean, that's what you want him to be. You want him to be out there. So now he's got to be a DPR. He's 238 pounds. He's going to run the ball up his ass. Remember, if you can run the ball to the weak side in 11 personnel, where you have a blocker at the slot receiver, a bigger guy, you got a chance to really run. If you have a left tackle that can pass, that can run block, shit, that's even better.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, they're going to sit there and look at him and say, fuck, we'll just run the ball over here. You know, it's 330-pound left tackle blocking Nolan Smith. We're gonna run him out. Yeah. We got to get him off the field now. We got to put a bigger guy out there. And so he's only going to be an 11 bunny or 11 rabbit, which is the 11 when it's definitely pass. So now he's a DPR.
2-minute drill.
Yeah. Now he's a DPR. So how many plays does that add up to? Okay, so that adds up to 500 plays for the 450 plays. You want to use the 7th pick, 8th pick on a 400-play guy?
No, we can't do that in the top 10.
And then try to tell him he's got to play special teams too.
We can't do that. I mean,
you can do that. You're a good lawyer.
Yeah, not that good. All right, we'll pass on Nolan Smith. We're going to go with Christian Gonzalez at 8 to Atlanta to kind of shore up that secondary that has made a lot of additions. I'm sure the fans down in Atlanta excited about what they have defensively there. Chicago, the original holders of the number 1 overall pick, moved down to 9. Carter's gone. Anderson's gone. We have Paris Johnson and Skoronski gone. I know a lot of people wanted Skoronski, the Northwestern kid, to go to Chicago.
Easy pick here.
We're getting
easy
wiped out a little bit. So we're getting
Broderick Jones. Pick? It's easy. They need a left tackle. They're going to take the kid. It's an easy pick. I mean, he's down here at 9. He's got no chance at a tackle. There's no defensive player here. He's got to take Broderick Jones. I mean, he's got to take – he needs a tackle. I mean, the guy's been sacked 91 times in 2 years.
That's a lot of – why not Darnell Wright? Because when I turned on the tape Alabama and Tennessee, I saw Darnell Wright kicking good. Will Anderson's ass, who just went in the top 5.
I just think Broderick Jones has a bigger ceiling. And as a former basketball player, I think he's really athletic. I think he could run block. He's played guard and tackle. I just think he has a bigger ceiling. Okay. I mean, I like Darnell Wright in that tape too. Just isn't as consistent. I mean, you can go there. I mean, that doesn't bother me.
No. Well, let's go Broderick Jones. We'll go with the Georgia kid. He's got the pedigree there. Although Wright is also a big-time recruit as well. Played well that last season at Tennessee. The Philadelphia Eagles, the defending NFC champions, picking in the top 10. That doesn't seem fair, but kudos to the GM.
I mean, I think, look, they need a rusher they could use. Could they take the Murphy kid from Clemson? Could they take Nolan Smith? A lot of people haven't taken Nolan Smith. I don't see it because I don't know how he gets on the field for them, because they're always ahead. Remember, they had such a first-half point differential, so they're always going to be in some form of nickel. Is he a DPR? It's great to have some guy that runs that fast, but can he get on the field? I think, to me, they take Bijan Robinson. It's easy. Ooh. It's safe. Although I would say this about Philly. If I'm Howie and I got a chance to get Jalen Carter to go with Jordan Davis and repair my defensive line, I trade up to go get him.
Mm. So let's say if Carter gets to
gets
past Seattle.
Yeah, if he gets past Seattle, I would even try to trade a 3.
Wow. I mean, you're high on Carter. You have him
because I'm high on Carter because it's, as Al Davis said, there's how many human beings on planet Earth? There are 3 techniques.
Planet theory. So with the off the field stuff, also
I think Howie probably feels like he can manage it. He's got Jordan Davis. He's got Dean. He's got all these guys there. And look, he's built his whole program on defensive line.
That is true.
Now, it would have cost him the 30th pick over on the draft to go up to get that. I think it would be worth it. I mean, so let's put it out there. Who you picking at 30? Say he stays. So basically, I've traded Jordan Day. I got Carter, and I traded, whoever they pick at 10. Say they pick an offensive tackle at 10. Let's say I traded Wright and, and a tight end. Say they take Mayer. Mm-hmm. All right, so I traded Wright and Mayer for Carter. I'd make that deal.
I'd make that deal too. I'd make that deal all day, every day. Now, playing the role of not Howie Roseman, but Jeffrey Lurie, Philadelphia Eagles owner. I'm looking at Nolan Smith. I see the athleticism. I know that we talk about pass rush. We always want to get to the quarterback. That's how we've built our Super Bowl runs. We won the Super Bowl back in 2017 with the pass rush. We almost did it this past season with the pass rush. Comparing the athletic and physical profiles of Nolan Smith and our star, Hassan Reddick. Both guys, Nolan Smith is actually taller, 6'2 1/4, Reddick 6'1 1/2. Reddick is 237, Smith 238. Arm length pretty similar as well. Reddick just a little bit longer, 32 3/4, while Nolan Smith is 32 5/8.
Yeah, remember Reddick had a hard time in Arizona. He didn't get his career going until he got to Carolina, and I think Reddick's college tape was better. Temple,
yeah.
It was. I thought it was, but you can certainly make that case. I think to me, I think when I watch Smith, I think he's going to have a hard time against big tackles. He's going to have a hard time powering them back. I think he's going to, at some point, you got to play with power. You just can't run up the field past people.
Otherwise, you just run yourself out of the play.
Yeah.
So at 10, what do we want? We're going to do Bijan?
I got Bijan, yeah.
Man. Bijan,
and I would alert them to be a trade-up team.
So Philly.
let me see. I got to go through my notes here. Hold on one second. Let's just break this down here for a second.
Because they do have the ammo to trade up with 2 first-round picks.
All right.
They have a roster that's pretty well put together.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, Bijan Robinson, we talk about luxury picks. I mean, that would be the ultimate luxury pick for a team that is already really good at running the football. I think you can put a lot of running backs behind that offensive line with Jalen Hurts, what he's able to do with the movement stuff in the 6-back offense. That run game is always going to be a threat. And now you're talking about adding possibly the best.
So Howie's been there 12 years, 10 to 14 and 16 to 23. He had the sabbatical with Chip Kelly. Okay, so according to my trade chart, he's made 39 total trades. He averages about three trades a year. He's traded up in that time. He's traded down. He's traded down 22 times. He's traded up 13, and he's traded for a player. So he's pretty active. I mean, he's going to be pretty. I mean, he's one of the most active traders in the draft. I mean, between him and Balky and. I think Chicago, I think Poles will make some trades. I think obviously Belichick will make a ton of trades.
Yeah.
Belichick, will trade down I'm sure he'll trade down. I think Bill's traded up once, if I remember correctly, twice for Chandler Jones and Hightower. And that's really
pretty
been
good players.
Yeah.
Pretty solid.
I mean, he's traded up in other rounds, but I'm talking about in the first round.
Yeah, because it comes with a little bit more of a price in the first round. So Eagles definitely a candidate.
I think they're a trade-up team, and I think 11 and 12 are trade-up teams. But I also think if they get shut out, I think 11 and 12 are trade-down teams too. I don't think Philly would trade down. I don't know how many more picks Philly needs to get because they have a really good roster. That's where, to me, if you're Philly and you signed your quarterback, the cost of that, you get a blue-chip defensive lineman like Carter, and you think you can manage him, I think it's worth it.
So in this scenario that we just kicked around here, we have one quarterback that has been off the board in the first 10 picks.
Yeah.
And once again, this is not like a traditional mock draft. This is the Michael Lombardi, what he would do inside the building if he was running those drafts. And you've said it all along. This goes right in line with what you've been saying about how there's a one quarterback draft.
Yeah. It's a one quarterback. And I'm saying it based on the college grading system that I believe in. And if to me, it's funny, Nick Bosa should be the representative. Everybody should play the Nick Bosa sound that Steve Keim was quoted as saying he said to him when Nick Bosa told Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, you're going to regret me if you take that little quarterback. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, look, at some point, I know you need a quarterback. I know we need one. You can't win without one. However, if you take the guy and still need a player at the position, that's the worst place to be. When you draft a player, you want to satisfy a need. That's why we have the need chart. We've satisfied that need. Okay? But when you take Levis, you take Richardson, you take Stroud, you haven't satisfied the need. You think you have, but you haven't.
Now, my pushback would be that we do have a couple of teams that can be patient with those guys in Seattle and Detroit, with Geno Smith and Jared Goff already as the incumbent starters. You might need the guy maybe 3 years down the line here, but you can at least develop them in year one behind those established starters to where maybe in year two, when you want to move on from Geno Smith, who his contract, they can easily move on from him, the way that
it all depends on where John sees the quarterback. It all depends on that. They've had success having multiple quarterbacks. Like when they took Russell Wilson, I can remember saying, how are they going to give all those quarterbacks reps? They got Wilson in the third. They traded for Matt Flynn, and they signed Matt Flynn as a UFA, and they traded for Charlie Whitehurst. And I'm sitting there saying, how are they going to give them all the reps? And they worked their way through it. So, I mean, the history says they could do it. To me, from my viewpoint, I don't think it's a good, But I respect the hell out of John, and if he thinks that he sees it differently than I do, then God bless him.
Yeah.
I just don't see it that way.
Yeah. Well, Schneider, he comes from that Ron Wolf tree of always take a quarterback.
And what I like about John more than anything is John doesn't let any outside influences bother him.
100%.
I mean, John could easily take somebody that Mel has targeted in the 20s,
40s.
Yeah, he could give a shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's really healthy.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, you can also find some, like we said, that 2012 draft, everybody gave it a bad grade. It ended up being the draft that helped propel him to win the Super Bowl.
And he had a great draft last year. So, to me, I think it's sometimes you pay a price for winning. When you're picking down there in the 20s all the time, it's hard. Mm-hmm. You're trying to find a 3 technique. You're trying to find an outside pass rusher. You're taking chances on guys. It's a harder proposition than people think it is.
The cool thing about the draft, I think, is that it's the ultimate Rorschach test. It's like you see what you want to see in these players.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you can see all the negatives, but you can also flip that picture around and say, oh, these are all the positives. Even with Will Levis, a guy who I'm not super high on, you can see the big time ability. And he's a good athlete as well. I think his athleticism, it doesn't get talked about enough because there's plays on tape where he makes some of those nice runs there.
Yeah.
Like you can see that stuff, but then you also see play breaks down, pressure, it looks like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah, I mean, and again, he's one of those guys that really, to me, it's one of those things for me at a quarterback that is really a violation of my code of quarterbacks is if you practice it in practice and it goes that way in the game, he looks really good. Mm-hmm. It's when you practice it and it doesn't go that way, he looks like shit. And that's the NFL. You can't script the game. If you could script the game, Mitchell Trubisky would be a good quarterback.
MVP.
He would be the MVP. If you could script the game, I'm sure Trey Lance would be good too. But you can't. You can't practice the way the game's going to go. There has to be a feel, an instinct, a rhythm. I don't see rhythm in Levis's game. I don't see rhythm in Stroud's game. I watched Stroud again yesterday. I was watching some other players in the Big Ten, and I was like, there's a lot of throws with Stroud, for as perceived accurate as he is, there's a lot of throws that I would say Brett Favre would call them more of a through-the-door throws than keyhole throws. Mm. I mean, it's just, look, when you're a great quarterback, like you don't throw the ball. If you're a quarterback and you have a receiver open on a stick route, let's say, and you know the tackler is coming from the outside in, you throw the ball on the inside. If you know the tackler's coming, so you can pinpoint where you want to throw the ball. You have a command. You're Greg Maddux back there. If you don't have that, you're going to throw more interceptions than you care to think about. It's hard. And you're going to get receivers blown up.
Yeah, you got to protect your guys out there. you don't want to be throwing
with accuracy, with your accuracy to protect the players.
Yeah, you don't want to throw a hospital ball. I think that sometimes fans see that they're like, "Oh, he threw that behind." It's like, no, he threw that because he didn't want his guy to run into this guy that's coming over to to take his head off.
Exactly.
So that's what it is. Last point here before we close this out on the podcast. Aaron Rodgers, of course, it's draft week, so he's got to be in the news. I
would say 90% he gets traded. To me, all the bluffing's over with, right? I mean, at some point,
down to the nitty gritty.
Oh, Mr. Murph. I mean, Big Daddy's outraged. Like Big Daddy Big Daddy always wants to blame Goot. I'm like, Big Daddy, leave Goot alone, please. Just focus on getting my bathroom ready to go. Like, leave Goot alone so I can go home. Leave Goot alone. It ain't Goot's fault. It's Mr. Murphy. I think Murphy's Goot finally will be able to say to Murph, "Hey, Murph. Like, we're going to let me get these 2 players and help our team." I mean, if I'm LaFleur, I'm like, look, he's not coming back. Let's get some help this year. We need it. Because you know what's going to happen? If you wait till next year, there'll be somebody else coaching that team.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that you don't want if you're your boy Matt LaFleur. So we expect Aaron Rodgers to be traded at some point this week, at least.
I think so.
No deal is quote unquote imminent according to
the reports, I just know in the tea leaves of the league that, remember, fear does the work of reason.
It always does.
And if I'm Joe Douglas, I want to get it done, but I really don't. I would rather let the draft I would at least let Friday get over with. Mm-hmm. Then I start talking Saturday, but I don't think he can bluff that way.
Yeah. I said, hey, how about next year's picks? How about no? I'll see you guys later. But once again, this week, we'll have 3 episodes on the podcast. So we have this episode. We'll have an episode Thursday morning, the morning of the draft, to kind of give our last thoughts about what will happen, some predictions about what will happen later on Thursday evening with the first round. And then Friday morning, we'll react to the first round of the draft. All 31 picks, because the Dolphins were tampering, only 31 of them. We will react to all 31 of those picks Friday morning on the pod. So you're getting 3 pods this week. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. Michael will be here in Vegas.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
I've been here all for a while, freezing my ass off, but I've been here.
Maybe they'll put some draft props up here in Vegas. Who knows? Maybe we'll see that happen. But as always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to all the viewers and listeners out there. We appreciate all the support. We see you guys. We hear you guys. Keep pumping up those numbers for the pod because we really do appreciate it. Thank you to our producer, Elliot Bowman, on the ones and twos. Thank you to you, Michael. And then I will talk to you on Thursday, which will be draft day. And I'm sure we will have some extra news about somebody emerging as a number 2 overall pick.
And we'll probably have Anthony Richardson going 5. Who knows?